This weekend in the Rochester Press Box from Salvatore's Pizzeria at the Garage Door Restaurant.
I'm Kevin Oklobzija. They say defense wins. Defense wins championships. The Rochester Americans, they have no defensemen, they have no goaltending, and they can't win.
Hi, I'm John DiTullio. I'm going to tell you about one certain Yankee player that I'm excited to see play in 2014.
I'm Mike Catalana. I'll tell you why I didn't like the Syracuse basketball team, and I'm not just talking about the way it ended.
And I'm Bill Pucko with Ralph Wilson's Big Pep Talk. Join us in the Rochester Press Box this weekend. The Rochester Press Box is brought to you by Salvatore's at the Garage Door, Rochester's choice winner for Best Pizzeria, featuring Wacky Wing Wednesday and the Super Slice. It's as big as your head. The games are always on at the Garage Door, home to the Rochester Press Box. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rochester Press Box here from Salvatore's Pizzeria at the Garage Door Restaurant, East Ridge Road, Irondequoit. I'm Bill Pucko, joined by WHAM-TV's John DiTullio.
Good to be here, Billy.
Mike Catalana from Fox Rochester and 13 WHAM News.
Good to be back.
And Kevin Oklobzija joins us from the Democrat and Chronicle, the hockey beat writer, and he's sort of semi-fresh off the Olympic trip to Sochi, which we'll get to a little bit later. The week is dominated by Buffalo Bills news. Of course, Jim Kelly undergoing surgery to try to arrest a really nasty cancer. And we lost Ralph Wilson this week at the age of 95. He left an amazing legacy. Michael, what do you think of when you think Ralph Wilson now?
You know, it's funny. He was 95 years old, and obviously we know he had been in ill health for a while, and you knew this was going to happen. And when it happens, it's still a monumental thing. I mean, you could say he's the most important person in the history of pro football in Western New York. I mean, he brought the team here, kept it here the entire time. It wasn't perfect. There were certainly ups and downs with Ralph Wilson. But in the end, for his life, the fact that he kept this franchise here from the time it started until his death, and then we'll find out going forward, I think that's his legacy. When he spent the money, when he did it the right way, he ended up with one of the great teams that never won a championship of all time.
Yeah, the founder and the only owner the Bills have ever had. That's an amazing, and one of the last surviving AFL owners from the original 8. And could have left, could have bolted Buffalo, chose not to. And I think we should commend him for that. For 54 years, he could have gone to greener pastures. Well, you heard Bill Pucko say that.
Yeah.
He did, and I only feel bad that he never lived to see maybe the glory days back, so to speak. That's disappointing for me.
Is there anyone more important in Buffalo sports history? I mean, we don't know what happens to the Bills franchise going forward.
Right.
If they would leave, a whole lot of meaning in Buffalo leaves. I mean, the Sabres would be the only, it'd be a one-horse town as far as pro sports teams, but, sorry, no offense to lacrosse, but
Yeah.
I think they lose importance because the city falls a little bit off the national map.
Oh, I think if that were to happen, that would be the case. You know what's interesting, too, is he turned over running of the franchise to Russ Brandon. And for the last few years, that has been happening, and he made it official a year ago. But I love the story from back, it was about 8 years ago, when Ralph's at the meetings and they're going through the CBA, and he's all fired up, and he does not like the deal. And he and the Raiders were the only ones to vote against it. And the perception was, the old guys, they don't like it, Ralph, whatever, they vote for it. And then 2 years later, the owners realize Ralph was right. They end up redoing the deal. We have the lockout, and then the owners get the better deal. He was always looking out for his own selfish interest, too, for the small market teams, because he knew that's what he was. But when he had an opinion, he stuck to it, and I think that was part of his legacy. He was loyal in that way.
Generous with his money, which we find out not only with the Patriots and Raiders, the Lions. He just helped organizations and businesses and people that was off the radar, that only now we're starting to find out how generous he actually was with his money.
Do you find yourself worried about the future of the franchise?
Oh, yeah.
I think you have to be because, as Kevin was just saying, we knew Ralph's the owner of the team. He's been here since the beginning, and that's that legacy. You don't know who is going to own it in the future. His family is going to sell it, and then at that point, it becomes up in the air.
It's even more clouded with the Jim Kelly situation. I mean, we don't know his health situation, and he's always been mentioned as someone who would spearhead a group to keep them in town. Well, that even puts more of a question into it.
I don't think certainly, but Jim, I don't think it helps. And we're all praying that he recovers and is doing well. From an ownership perspective, I think he would have been one of those guys to help with the group. It's going to be somebody coming in. I like the lease that they signed. At least that buys them some time. It buys them those 7 years. But then after that, it's
I find
wide
myself
open.
on the same page with you, though, thinking that, this meant too much to Ralph for too long to just.
I gotta
drop it
believe
at the end.
something. I don't. If it goes to the open market and goes to open bid, I have concerns. I gotta believe there's a plan, and we're gonna hear from Russ Brandon. He said at some point they'll address the future. I just gotta believe there is a plan in place. I believe so.
All right, we move from football to hockey when we return. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box here from Salvatore's Pizzeria, the Garage Door Restaurant. Bill, with John, Mike, and Kevin. The hockey fortunes of the two local teams, semi-local, the Rochester Americans and the Buffalo Sabres, have sort of taken a turn for the worst since you've returned from Sochi.
My pleasure, thank you.
What
How could the Sabres have gotten any worse?
That's true,
Well,
but the Amherst suddenly find themselves losing games in bunches.
Yeah, well, they lost both goalies because the Sabres lost both goalies, so they went up. Then they lost a bunch of defensemen. They traded one, Braden McNabb, the all-star defenseman from the Amherst. Chad Ruhwedel got called up. Rasmus Ristolainen got called up, and then when he got sent down, he's sick, so he can't play. Who else did they lose? Oh, and then their own, Drew Bagnall, their captain, has season-ending shoulder surgery, so that leaves them with two of their own real defensemen, one of whom got hurt in Cleveland over the weekend. Now he's out, as is Mark Pesic. They have 4 East Coast defensemen. Sorry, ECHL. There is no such thing as the East Coast League anymore. 4 ECHL defensemen, one of their own, Nick Crawford, and a guy who wasn't playing in Worcester that they got on loan. You cannot possibly win with 4 ECHL defensemen and 2 goalies who were in the ECHL.
I think that's his way of saying it's not his fault.
Wow.
He documented
Or,
that pretty well.
or it's not my fault.
Are you
And,
sure you covered everything in that? I feel like you
It's a
missed
shame
few
though,
things.
Kevin, because
Wow.
they
were rolling.
They were good.
Yeah, they were playing.
when March started, they had the best defense in the American League, or certainly as good as anyone else, because they had Ristolainen, they had Ruhwedel, they had Pesic, they had McNabb.
If they
4
can-
really good young
If they can
defensemen.
hang on to a playoff berth towards the end of the season now, do they get reinforcements because Buffalo's out of the Stanley Cup?
They'd get Delorier's back. He's never really been here. He was the guy they got in the trade for McNabb. They'd get both goalies back, Hackett, Lewin. So they're decent there, and then they'd get all their defensemen except for Bagnall and McNabb. But they'd have 4. They'd still have a really good defense corps. But they're falling fast, and it may be too late to save it because the other teams are not losing guys.
That would be a shame because I think the last time you were in here, we were all talking up about the prospects of this team actually making a playoff.
Yeah, I mean, they have some good forwards. They could do something in the playoffs. They could win a round. However, if they finish 8th and play Texas, they're still done. So what's the point of getting in?
You know, it's so funny. This is the first time in a long time where I go home and the Sabres aren't even on my radar to even flip them on to watch. By the way, they are playing, and it's just tough to watch the Sabres play hockey at this
Now,
point.
they're in a funny spot with all this happening with the Buffalo Bills, an ownership transfer, and perhaps down the road the possibility of the team leaving town. Where do the Sabres sit positionally in all of that with the Bills?
They need the Bills, I think. I mean, I really think that just adds to the sports town. If you're a one-horse town, maybe it's okay. I mean, maybe it works, but I just think the NFL brings so much more attention and just keeps people's interest in sports. If it's just the Sabres year-round, to me, I think some people fade away and sports falls a little off their radar.
That's like against the conventional wisdom. It's like, they would never say so, but wouldn't the assumption is the Sabres would benefit if the football team left?
Perhaps, but I mean, I really don't see it that way. I think it hurts. Granted, it seems every time the Sabres had an announcement, the Bills would trumpet with something. It's amazing through the last few years how when something happened on the Sabres, just
The NFL's
coincidentally, the Bills had something the same day.
I just always thought all along, and it breaks my heart that Western New York, unless we get some massive growth spurt here, that it's just not suited to hold or house 2 professional franchises. I think eventually one is going to go, and obviously the Sabres are never going anywhere. I just think eventually the Bills are going to leave. I don't know when that's going to happen. I just don't know how financially an area like ours can house and basically have two tenants in the professional leagues. I just
Certainly,
don't.
let's appreciate him while we got him. When we return here from Salvatore's Pizzeria at the Garage Door in the Rochester Press Box, we have Like It or Not. Welcome back to the Rochester Press Box here from Salvatore's Pizzeria at the Garage Door Restaurant, Eastridge Road in Irondequoit. Have Wacky Wings Wednesday, live music here every Friday. And the Rochester Lancers are in a bit of a middle of thing. They're reorganizing indoor soccer throughout the United States, and Rochester is playing a lead role in that. That's a topic that we'll address with some people here next week. Like it or not, Kevin, it's been a while. Do you remember Sochi? What'd you think?
I went with really low expectations because I'd heard so many things about the hotels not being ready and about dogs running around and about food, and I had a great time. I really did. I mean, maybe because I wasn't expecting a lot, but my hotel was fine. It wasn't fancy. It was, a cement floor with a piece of indoor-outdoor carpet, whatever they would have bought in the 70s, but it was fine. I had a patio, and I was there so little, it really didn't matter as long as you could sleep, and I could. Very odd that the hinges on the door were on the outside. Like, what's the point of the key? Apparently it was one of those, open the door or we're coming in. I don't know, but I had a very good time. I did see some dogs on leashes. That was a shocking sight, but it was good. It was very well done, and it was so secure. Unless it was an airstrike, there was nothing coming through there.
Was there any talk of Ukraine? I mean, because that happened right on the heels of the Olympics ending.
It had started. I mean, the uprising kind of had started in Kiev, so I'm watching that on the BBC. One of two channels I could, get in my room that were in English. It was very odd watching Law and Order in Russian.
Countries like Putin and basically dictators get the Olympics. Who lined their pockets on that deal? Bothers me.
They're more corrupt than your favorite organization.
They're close.
NCAA.
Well, the NCAA, they're close. The IOC's here. The NCAA is nipping on their heels.
Oh, boy.
Michael,
well, the NCAA's got to do
like
something.
it or not, Syracuse basketball team obviously didn't like their exit, but take the year as a whole. Like it or not, the Syracuse basketball team.
I didn't like them when they were 25-0, and I got so much grief from people who, can only see the result. I saw the result. They were winning. I didn't like their offense. I didn't like the way they were playing. I liked some of their individual players. Their offense ended up killing them, which was their problem, their Achilles heel. I'll give Jim Boeheim this. He admitted it when they were 25-0, that they were flawed. They should have lost about 4 games, and they survived. Their offense in the tournament, well, certainly the second game was an embarrassment. 18 points at halftime.
Amazing.
I think Jim Boeheim does a great job of recruiting players to fit his zone, but I think he better start changing a little bit. You can't have 6-7 guys with long arms who can't shoot anymore. Somebody's got to make a jumper. They didn't have anybody on that team that could make a jump shot, and it killed them in the tournament, and it'll kill them going forward unless they recruit differently.
What really struck me is that the difference in the quality of the game when I saw North Carolina play Iowa State and the Kentucky-Wichita State games, that those games still had pace, and the Syracuse game was just dead.
It's too bad, because I really thought they could at least get to the Sweet 16. I thought they had 2 wins in them, and for whatever reason, they set basketball back. So did Dayton.
Yeah.
Dayton was almost as bad as Syracuse
But
in that
give
game.
Dayton this. It's Dayton.
Yeah, true,
Atlantic
true.
10. They're fighting
Yeah.
to get through. I said the Syracuse zone reminds me of the New Jersey Devils trap. It'll keep you in the game, but it's boring to watch.
Yeah.
That's what I see with Syracuse's zone. It's like the games are slowed down, the possessions are long, nobody is scoring. It's hard to watch. I'm trying to give you a hockey end to this.
Can you make that hockey reference?
Plain and simple. I mean, to me, basketball's hard to watch.
Oh, okay. He's gone straight.
Move
that
the
way.
ball down the court. Oh, timeout. Can they not figure out what to do on their own?
I agree on the timeouts.
Every coach has got a plot strategy. And then, because of one possession and something happened, we need a timeout now.
Johnny, like it or not, the Dodgers go to the top of the payroll
I
list in Major League
love
Baseball.
when any team spends money. Okay, there's no so-called cap. There's a luxury tax, so they'll get hit. Hey, they are over $200 million, lost in the playoffs for the Cardinals last year. I think it benefits baseball. I know I'm in the minority. When teams spend money, it forces other teams and other owners, rather than line their pockets, spend their money. I think it's great for baseball if the Dodgers are spending money.
But they knocked the Yankees off the top.
I think it's even better.
Does that mean they've
now
got to step it up?
There's a new evil empire in Major League
So
Baseball.
today he didn't mention Moneyball Yankees, and you had Penn State wrestling. You didn't even mention.
Cale Sanderson,
National champs
champion.
again.
That's right, buddy. And by the way, the Red Sox, Moneyball 2, featuring Bill Pucko, they have a payroll of $163 million.
Dropped the fourth.
Oh,
Behind
dropped the
the
fourth.
Phillies, who
Behind
get a
the
lot for
Phillies.
their
They
bucks.
should chop off some of that money.
Moneyball 3 is coming out with the Red Sox going to spend $185 million.
I forgot you hated basketball so much. Unfinished business when we return. Welcome back. The Rochester Press Box here from Salvatore's Pizzeria at the Garage Door Restaurant. We have a little unfinished business, and John goes first.
You know, over the years, the Yankees have made some bad trades. Willie McGee to St. Louis for Bob Sykes, Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps, but they've also made some good trades. Paul O'Neill being traded for Roberto Kelly, and I love the Tino Martinez trade from Seattle to New York. There's a trade that's still incomplete, but I'm anxious to see possible results this year. Michael Pineda, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, made the All-Star team for Seattle. Then was acquired for Jesus Montero. Big DH. He was going to be the next big bat in the Yankee lineup. Well, at this point, he's almost eaten himself out of the league. He showed up with Seattle about 40 pounds overweight. Michael Pineda, 6'7", anchoring, I wouldn't say anchoring, but will be the fifth starter. And I think Yankee fans are looking for some sort of progress this year. He has not pitched in 3 years because of elbow and shoulder issues. Give him every 4 or 5 days some quality starts. You're looking at possibly the future right arm of the New York Yankees. This is a trade that Brian Cashman maybe patted on the back this year, if not next year, getting him for Jesus Montero.
You can add him to the list, right? We had Jeter, Roberts, Teixeira, and Pineda. Who goes down first?
Ellsbury.
And Ellsbury.
I'll say, who said Roberts earlier?
That was me.
I'll go Brian Roberts. Derek Jeter may break his leg, but he'll be Jack Youngblood. He will play on that broken leg just so he can shut everybody up.
All righty, Kevin?
The Buffalo Sabres have had quite the year. They're just an embarrassment right now. They really are. They have the pieces, however, to rebuild. It's going to take time. Be bad again next year because you want Connor McDavid. You want that top pick. Even if you don't get him, you're guaranteed the second pick. So be bad next year. Just suffer through it. The thing I can't figure out, though, is why there's this fascination to hire Ted Nolan as the coach again. Not that Teddy's done anything wrong this year, and he certainly did nothing wrong in his first tenure. But I don't see him as the guy who you rebuild with young prospects. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be very wrong. But it just seems you want not just a motivator, but a very good technical X and the O's. This is how you develop. This is how you grow in the game. Now, your assistants can do that. And perhaps they'll build and they'll have a staff around him just like the NFL. Because the NFL is really the head coaches that delegates and kind of oversees. So maybe that's what Teddy does. In the Olympics, he's perfect. Look what he did with Latvia. But over the long haul, in a rebuild, a 3-year deal for, I just don't get it.
Is there a short answer as to why Ted Nolan is so polarizing?
A short answer?
Yeah.
Probably. A lot of it is just his way. And, you know, stubborn is not a bad thing necessarily in sports. Sometimes you don't want to be swayed. Teddy can be stubborn, and his way might be the right way, but others don't always see it that way.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Tim Murray loves Nolan either, so we'll see if he wants to hire him, but I guess we'll have to wait. Mark Cuban talked this week, and he talked about the NFL, and I heard him today say, I'm surprised it made such noise. Look, when Mark Cuban talks, it usually makes noise. He's an NBA owner. He's on a TV show telling you what to do with your businesses when you want money. Mark Cuban has made money. He knows money. He knows sports. He thinks the NFL may be getting a little too big for its britches, and he says the NFL could find itself imploding in its own greed over a 10-year period. Now, it's easy to look at Mark Cuban and say, he's an NBA guy. He's jealous of what they have in the NFL. He needs to be quiet, worry about the NBA. But I think there's a little something to what Mark Cuban says. It may be self-serving. It may be because his league gets pounded down by the NFL like everybody else. But when the NFL starts talking about these 18-game schedules, spreading out to 4-5 nights a week to play different games, expanding for more teams, bigger isn't always better. They've got a great thing right now. Greed is not always good. And sometimes in the NFL, Mark Cuban could be right. It could hurt the league.
And Ralph Wilson had a lot to do with the way the NFL sits right now. You know, we all remember and fondly remember usually our very first jobs. Now, Ralph Wilson's first job wasn't an owner of the Buffalo Bills. He was 40 years old by the time he took on the AFL. He had already been in the South Pacific and served in World War II. But, you know, Ralph Wilson's time, the 6 years especially before the merger in the AFL, that's where all his great stories come. Those were the good times for Ralph Wilson. When he was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he told a story. I went back and I watched his speech, and he actually told it quite well. For a 90-year-old guy up on that podium for 20 minutes, he did a really nice job in his presentation speech. This is the story he told. It was preseason 1960, the Buffalo Bills' very first year. They were playing the New York Titans in a preseason game, and they were behind 21-7 at halftime. His buddies convinced him that a good thing to do would be that he should go down to the locker room and give the guys a pep talk. He reluctantly did so. So he went down there. Buster Ramsey is the coach, and he was surprised to see him. He says, go ahead, do whatever you got to do. So Ralph gave him a pep talk that he described was very Vince Lombardi-like. He went back up to the owner's box, or whatever the owner's box was back then, and watched the second half of the game, when his Buffalo Bills proceeded to turn a 21-7 deficit at halftime into a 51-7 defeat. He sees Buster Ramsey at the end of the game, and Buster brings him over and says, Ralph, look, next time you feel the urge to talk to a football team, talk to the other guys. Rest in peace, Ralph Wilson, and thanks for the memories. We record the Rochester Press Box here at Salvatore's Pizzeria in the Garage Door Restaurant every Wednesday afternoon, 12:30. We invite you to come down, meet the guys, have a little lunch. John, thank you very much.
Good
Great
stuff,
as always.
Billy.
Mike, Kevin?
My pleasure.
All righty. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.